What's up, YouTube? This is BoxingWave. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Also, follow me on Instagram and Twitter at BoxingWave10. We're going to get right into it. This is not going to be like my normal breakdown videos. Okay? I got to be completely unfiltered here. Going into this fight, a lot of people are wondering whether or not Errol Spence is the same fighter since that accident. Let's be honest. Let's all be honest with ourselves. Is Errol Spence Jr. the same fighter that he was before that accident? He hasn't been in the ring since he beat Sean Porter. Okay, so he's been inactive like most fighters have. But after that fight, he got into an accident. And we all seen it. We all seen the photos, post-accident of him. We seen the interviews. We seen the damage done to him. Okay? According to him and his doctor and what he said, he didn't receive any kind of brain damage. Now, doesn't mean that he's going to be as durable and his punch resistance is going to be the same as it was before. We just got to have to wait and see. There's no way to predict that. A lot of people are leaning towards Danny simply because they don't think Errol's the same. They seen the interviews. They heard him talk. They feel that he talks like he's punch drunk. I've heard the interviews. I've thought about it. Could it be his teeth, his dentures in his teeth? I know some teeth, he lost some teeth in that. A lot of people feel it's just his teeth. He's okay. We won't know until the fight. If Errol is not the same fighter, we don't know, or we won't know until the fight. And even after this fight, even if he loses his fight, we still may not know. All right, but look, all I know is that Errol has been preparing for a long time. He's been focused. He's been fit. He's been fit. He didn't blow up. He's been fit for a long time. He's been preparing. He said it himself. He's been preparing since earlier this year. It was a little uncomfortable for him getting things together, but he's been preparing. He was planning on fighting Danny already. A lot of people didn't like the Ivan Redkach fight, but he was a southpaw. That's why Danny fought him. You know what? Let's get in the ring with someone that's a southpaw just to prepare me for a fight. I expected a knockout. I did. Most of us did. Ivan Redkach, he's taken his losses, his share of losses. Danny has knocked out people on that level. He normally does. But he didn't that night. Went the distance. People weren't really impressed with that. All right. But when it comes to Errol Spence, there's no way to predict it. If you're a gambler, you think that Errol might not be the same, bet on Danny. Whatever you choose to do. But I'm judging this fight based on what I've seen from these two in the ring. I'm not basing it off the accident. The accident is a factor. I'm not saying it's not. But in order to look at the two of them, and when I compare the two, and when I study the two, and I watch them fight and everything, I think Errol is just on a different level than Danny Garcia. And normally when I do a breakdown, listen, if it's your first time here, you never seen one of my videos, I normally will give you the keys of victory for both fighters. I'll talk about their resumes. I'll talk about, their most recent fights, the styles, all that stuff. I break that down. But I've been watching Danny for a very, very, very long time. I've been watching him for a while, and I've been watching Errol since basically his whole pro career, and I've seen some of his amateur stuff. And even though Danny is a top welterweight, I've been critical of him before, but he's still a top welterweight. I think Errol is just a different level. He's an elite fighter, pound for pound fighter. Wherever you have him at, he's on that elite level. Whereas Danny is a top fighter in the welterweight divisions, But there's other guys. There's levels. And I think when it comes to Errol at welterweight, I don't see anybody beating him except Terrence Crawford. And vice versa. If Bud loses to anybody today, it's against Errol Spence and no one else. In my opinion. Obviously, they didn't fight everybody. I don't know how every fight would go, but I'm just basing it on how this is what I see in the two of them. I only see one person being Bud. And if anybody's going to be Bud, it's going to be Spence. If anybody's going to be Spence, it's going to be Bud. Danny, he's cool. He's tough. It's a dangerous fight based on the circumstances of that car accident. But we're talking about breaking down and looking at the two fighters and comparing the two of them against Errol, who he's faced, getting up to this point, and Danny, who he's faced, getting up to this point. Danny was a superb junior welterweight. He was the top up there. He's one of the best, if not the best, when he was there. But as a welterweight, not really too sure. He's a top welterweight. He's a top 5, maybe number 5, number 6, somewhere around there. But he's dangerous. It's a dangerous chance taking this fight with Errol because we don't know where Errol is at. But if there was no accident, Errol beats him. And Errol makes it look easier than anybody else that Danny has lost to. Errol, based on what I've seen the two of them do, Errol beats him better than Thurman, beats him better than Porter, beat him better than Mauricio Herrera, who people like myself think Danny lost to, beats him better than Lamont Peterson. I don't think Peterson beat him because Peterson gave too many rounds away. But Peterson gave you round 8. Go back and look at that fight. I was just watching it yesterday. Peterson was beating and hunting Danny down, and Danny had nothing for him. Problem is, Peterson wasn't really fighting. He was toying around, but when he got busy in that 8th round, Danny had nothing for him. He walked him down, he beat him up, he bullied him. Made him look slow. Now, Danny's power. I was listening to Sean Porter, and I haven't been watching. I'm sure there's a lot of. I haven't really, I haven't been that active this week and last week. I haven't, right? I haven't gone on live in a couple of weeks, so it's been quiet for me a little bit. So I haven't really been watching too many YouTubers, but I did get a chance to listen to some of Sean Porter's interview. All right, Sean Porter and Mikey Garcia, they had like a collage of interviews. You know how they do normally when you're leading up to a fight and they interview all the fighters. I was listening to Keith Thurman, Mikey Garcia, Sean Porter. I think it was on Fight Hype. And I was listening to interviews, and I was like, all right, let me listen to some of these guys that fought one of these two or both, or both or whatever. And, Sean Porter said one thing to me that stood out. And they all pretty much got spins. But Sean Porter said one key thing to me, and he's like, when it comes to Danny's timing, people talk about his timing, his counterpuncher ability. He said something in the lines of, Danny has power. Danny has good timing, he can counter. But he said, but when you throw him off, like when you force him to fight a different way, he's not really effective that way. Like, he didn't say it exactly like that, but I'm trying to explain exactly how I think about Danny. Like, if you look at Danny's knockouts, right? I'm sure he has power. I believe he has power. But the thing with Danny is you got to be at that exact sweet spot where he can catch you. Whether it's the overhand right, whether it's that no-look left hook that he loves throwing, you have to literally be standing there with your chin up like this to catch it. Because if you're not there, he's not going to knock you out. He might not even really hurt you. When I look at his knockouts, these guys were literally right there elite fighters are not going to be in these spots. And the few that were caught by him, they were on a different level. They had better chins. Brandon Rios was right there waiting to get hit. Adrian Granados was right there waiting to get hit. Hit me right here. He was right there. Rod Salka, come on, hit me again. Danny's throwing his best punch over and over again. Then he totally slays this dude. Every guy that's been knocked out, Amir Khan, we already know Amir Khan. We know how he is. You know how he gets chucked. We already know he has a glass jaw. He has a glass jaw. And Danny, worst style for him. I said that during the Matisse fight. Matisse coming off the Lamont Peterson knockout. Everybody's like, oh, that's the first video I did on here. And I said, Danny's going to beat him. Matisse, dangerous, punches really, really hard, but he's there to get hit. Danny is going to beat him up. These fighters are good fighters, but a lot of these guys that Danny beat, their style was tailor-made for Danny, especially the ones that got KO'd. These guys' chin is right there. They're right in that mid-range spot because Danny, he's slow, and he has short arms. He's not an inside fighter, and he's not a long-range fighter. Most of his punches are wide. So you got a guy like Errol Spence. Look at Spence. Don't look at the Kell Brook fight too much. Not for this fight. You know why? Because we knew that Kell Brook, when it came to a boxing match, he was beating him to the punch a little bit. You know? He was just a little quicker. Timing was better. Jab, everything was a little better than Spence. Plus, you know, we know Spence adjusted. Spence showed us in that fight that he can adjust. He adjusted and turned into a dogfight. Beat up Kell Brook. Beat him up. You know, I'm gonna rough you up. I'm gonna beat it up. I'm gonna put the pressure on you. I'm not gonna stop. You need time. I'm not gonna give you no more time. I'm gonna take that away from you and I'm gonna beat you up. He turned it into something else. But if you look at the Mikey Garcia fight, and I know Mikey's just a guy from 135 going up, but I'm talking about the way Spence was fighting. If you look at the Lamont Peterson fight, look at that fight. Look at the way Errol was boxing compared to Danny fighting Lamont Peterson. Spence is working that jab. He's showing you how quick he is. Peterson had nothing on him. Peterson couldn't even get close to him. But while he was fighting Danny, he's dancing around. He's making Danny miss. He's embarrassed. He's toying around with him. And then he dogs him out. Lamont couldn't do neither. Spence, I heard him in an interview say, you know, and this is why, even though I think the Mikey fight was a mismatch, I don't bash Spence for not knocking him out. Now, I think a couple of those two later rounds, I think he really tried to knock Mikey out, and I think Mikey's just a tough dude. But, you know, I don't bash him for not stopping Mikey because he shut Mikey out. First of all, he shut him out. And second, he said himself, I wanted to show you guys that I can box. Because a lot of you guys said he had a better IQ, you know, going into the fight. And I said Spence was going to win that fight. I said it was a mismatch, but I did say Mikey, to me, is probably the superior boxer. It's just that if he is, it's not by much. And Spence is much bigger than him. You know what I'm saying? That was my breakdown of the fight. But regardless, just check those fights out. Look at the way Spence was keeping that distance between him and Mikey. Mikey, the smaller, shorter guy, lower, you know, doesn't have the reach. Spence says, I'm just going to keep you out here. And then when I decide to come in and bully you, which he did at some point, it wasn't enough to stop him. That's just saying that Mikey's a tough dude. Mikey's just a tough dude because Spence did enough to stop Kell Brook, but he couldn't stop Mikey. You know? He stopped Kell Brook, though. But I know Kell Brook, I don't want to get too much because I know you guys are going to say Kell Brook was coming off the Triple G fight. So I get it. I get it. But Spence did stop other welterweights overall. Spence is better. And, you know, if Spence is Spence, and if he's 100% himself, Spence is going to outbox Danny. Danny is going to be looking to time him and counter him. It's going to be too slow. Spence has already fought guys that's much quicker than Danny. Guys that beat Danny. Okay? He's been there already. Spence needs a more of a challenge. Danny, all Danny has for me, and I know a lot of y'all gonna hate me for saying this. I know I'm gonna sound like a hater. I know I'm gonna sound, especially you Danny Garcia fans. There's a lot of you guys on here. But Danny's chance of winning is the accident. Because Spence is on a different level to him. And Spence already proven beating Kell Brook, beating Sean Porter. He already proved that he's better. Even beating Mikey. Even though Mikey ain't a proven welterweight like that. The way he beat him and how easy he made it look for a guy that's as sharp as he is of a boxer, I think he's going to do it to Danny, but he's going to do it to Danny better than anybody else have ever done it. Whoever you think Danny lost to or looked bad against or, you know, has an official loss to, Spence is going to do it better. Spence is going to work that jab. Danny is going to be too slow. He's going to be trying to walk up, trying to time him. And you know what? If Spence is good and his punch resistance is good, we better hope he chooses to fight a safe fight. Because if Spence decides to do what Lamont Peterson was doing, because he can, because we already know that Spence is a good inside fighter. He's good all the way around. If Spence decides to say, you know what? I'm going to bully you and I'm going to make you work. I'm going to make you fight on your back foot. I'm going to make you uncomfortable and then I'm going to bully you. I'm going to have you against the ropes and I'm going to beat you down. Danny, as durable as he is, and I don't think Danny's going to lose by knockout. I don't, because I don't think Team Spence is going to take any chances here. But if he decides to, and he says he wants to prove to these naysayers that I'm good, for the doubters, he's going to really put it on Danny if he decides to make it a dog fight. Because Danny, like I said, Danny is a good fighter, but he needs that sweet spot to really actually hurt you. And I think Spence, his defense, you know, it's just his boxing IQ, his awareness of things. I don't think Danny is bringing him anything that we haven't seen. Danny don't have it better than some of the fighters. Spence is too experienced at this point. I have Spence winning this by a unanimous decision. And it's going to be wider. It's not going to be no split decision. I have him winning this. Now, again, going back to the car accident. You guys could disagree. Nah, man, he ain't the same. He ain't talking the same. He got brain damage. That's cool. That's what you going with. But I'm talking about as far as what we've seen between these two in the ring, like what I can actually go back on. Danny beat fighters. He stopped fighters because they were a certain level of fighters and they fought a certain way. They were just tailor-made for him. And Spence fought everybody Danny fought. He's fought Sean Porter. He fought Lamont Peterson. He didn't fight Keith Thurman. Right? But Keith Thurman is kind of going downhill right now. But he fought all those in-between guys, like a Robert Guerrero. Spence would have stopped Guerrero. Spence would have stopped Ivan Redcash. Spence would have stopped all of those guys. We saw what happened with Lamont Peterson. Sean Porter gave him a good fight, but Spence still did better against Porter than Danny did. And Spence, that's another interview that Spence said. Spence said, I fought his fight and beat him. It's kind of like Terrence Crawford. It's like they hear what people are saying and they want to beat these fighters the way that the public don't think they can. So I wouldn't be surprised at some point in this fight, not early, but I wouldn't be surprised if the 8th, 9th round come around and Spence got a comfortable lead against Danny, and Danny, is more on, he's putting the pressure on Danny. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts going in and digging to his body more. Okay? Roughing him up, using those elbows and just digging, throwing those uppercuts. Danny's not an inside fighter. He needs space. He need to be, he a mid-range guy, and that's it. He needs the opportunity to time you. He don't want you all over him. And that's what Sean Porter was saying in their fight. We seen it. Sean Porter ain't lying. This is a guy that been in the ring with him. Keith Thurman, same thing. He's been in the ring with Danny. He knows how Danny fight. They see more in Spence. All right. Another thing too, and one last point, I think I honestly don't think these guys would put him in the ring with Danny if they didn't know he was okay. Derek James ain't good. If anybody knows Spence ain't right, he would know. He would know. I've seen his interviews. I mean, listen, if he's putting that kid in there with Danny on his first fight back, he would know. Like, you with the kid every day. You in the gym with him. You train and prepare him for this fight. If anybody knows that Spence is off, it would be Derek James. And if they feel comfortable and confident enough to go into this fight, and they've been sparring, I'm sure they know Spence is good. Spence might even be better because maybe he's more motivated now. Because he caught a lot of slander after that accident. Y'all remember. A lot of people were slandering him for getting in that car accident because he was drinking and everything like that. So maybe that's what he needed for motivation. And he might even be better than what he was against Sean Porter or Kell Brook or any of those other fighters he faced. That's what I'm banking on. I say Errol win this one by a unanimous decision. And a wide. I'm thinking I'm giving Danny, I'm saying 9 rounds to 3. And that's the being generous. All right. Listen, if I'm wrong, you can come back in here and slander me. I don't care. But that's the way I see it, right? Peace.